Pick a star. Any one of the hundreds of billions of stars in our Milky Way galaxy. Suppose on one of its planets there lives an intelligent species who believes that their world is the center of the universe. A universe made for them. We awakened on this tiny world beneath the blanket of stars without a note to explain where we come from, who we are. We inhabited a tiny universe, oblivious to the rest of the cosmos. We now know that our galaxy alone holds hundreds of billions of stars, and that the visible universe contains at least 100 billion galaxies. In the last 6 years, we have discovered nearly 2,000 planets beyond our solar system. It's now estimated that there are tens of billions of habitable planets in our galaxy alone. Are there any on which matter and energy have become alive or aware? Are we alone? If we are, then that tells us something about the preciousness of life on Earth. And if we're not alone, then what discovery could possibly be more important? It's time for a major international effort to unlock the great unanswered mystery of life in the universe. We have only just begun to open our eyes. Come with us.
Wow. That's a big thought. So I guess I have to ask you, Frank, you've been at this forever, sometimes attracting...
Not quite.
I'm sorry?
Not quite forever.
Not quite forever, but very early on from
55 years.
55 years, that's
yes.
Like forever. Why, let me start with you. Why did you start doing this? In 1960, you started searching for this thing. What prompted you on this quest?
Well, I started on this quest at the age of 8, actually, when
Okay.
my father told me that elsewhere in space there were places like the Earth. Mm-hmm. And that just fascinated me then, and it fascinates me now. What are those creatures like? How do they live? What do they enjoy? What are their cultures? What are their governments? All of that. And of course, I couldn't imagine them being much different from us, although they probably are. And I had to wait until about 1958, when I was studying radio astronomy, to realize that we had a way to find them, which was to use radio telescopes to detect their radio signals. And so then I started the first modern search for extraterrestrial intelligent radio signals, and I've been at it ever since.
So initially, people were not taking you seriously, or there was, skepticism around the idea.
There was a lot of skepticism because it was felt mistakenly that the creatures would be perhaps like us, and that seemed impossible in many places. And in particular, we knew of no other planetary systems. We thought the solar system was perhaps unique, and no other planetary systems, no creatures, no radio transmitters. And so people were very dubious that there was something to be found out there. But the universe is very inventive and opportunistic. Anything that can happen does happen in the universe. And we're the prime example. We are really weird. We're so complex.
Well, speak for yourself, Frank.
Well,
I'm weird.
I don't know. I'm
Yeah, okay.
checking you out.
Okay, all right, okay, fine.
But we are an example of how extreme the universe can be, and we're probably not the most extreme example.
Okay.
And so it seemed to be logical to search in whatever way we can. And now we felt that searching for radio transmissions was the most promising way to search.
Okay. Yuri, still, at the same time, even though there was a lot of dubiousness around Frank's search from the early days, what is it? What did you tell me? 30% of Americans believe the aliens are here? Or I would think that's 89%. And they're all, something like that. Why did you do this? You put in, explain what you did for everyone here who might not know.
Well, in 1961, when Frank was holding the first conference in Green Bank, Virginia, there were 11 people at this conference. It was really the first really serious gathering around this problem. It was the same year when Yuri Gagarin was launched, and Kennedy made his famous speech that we should go to the moon. I also happened to be born in the same year, and I was called Yuri because of Yuri Gagarin, so it seems like I had some sort of message to carry forward. So when I had, and very early on in my life, I was reading books by Carl Sagan and Isaac Asimov and others, and was following the space. I became a scientist because I was really excited by, scientific way to look at this problem. And then when I really had the opportunity to do something in that space, and the opportunity presented itself because governments around the world, they got out of this business in late 90s. But the amazing thing is that now we can do it so much more efficient. We can probably do the search 1,000 times more efficient than any previous search. And the reason is that we can put together the best that Silicon Valley can offer, which is the processing power and the software. And we can connect this very powerful software to the biggest scientific equipment that we have, which is these huge radio telescopes that are sitting around the world. And that's what the project is about.
You're putting is it $100 million?
Yeah.
Now, spending $100 million may be easy for you, but it's a lot of money for most people. What made you think this is because there's lots of things to put $100 million into, and you've invested in all kinds of companies and things like that. This is an unusual choice. You've been doing medical stuff for a while through the breakthrough initiatives. Why aliens?
I think I think most of the people will agree that this is one of the most existential philosophical questions. And I think that we as human beings should devote some resources, and it's not even 1%. We're talking about a small fraction, probably a thousandth of 1%, to address the biggest existential questions. And this is the project that is not going to bear results in the next year, but I think we should allocate together, collectively, some resources that we should be investing, tens and hundreds of years forward. So that's and frankly, no one else was doing it. So
yeah, there really hasn't been. And SETI had sort of been, for a while, it got a lot of attention, and then less so. Correct, Frank?
Yes, for many years we were supported, particularly by successful people in Silicon Valley who really appreciated what we were doing because they were very cognizant about space science and such. But that funding sort of faded away for the last 10 years, and as a result, SETI is now in dire straits. We have only a few people in the whole world. We estimate probably only 20 full-time equivalents in the whole world working on SETI. Whereas to us, who have thought about it a lot, it's the most important question ever. And to get the answer, to find another civilization, would enrich us in incredible ways. It would change everything. And to have only 20 people working on it, and on a shoestring, seems very stupid, so to speak.
So now you're cooperating, correct? You're not funding SETI. It's in cooperation with a number of...
Yeah, well, this is the SETI initiative,
right?
To really try to find the signal from advanced civilization. But we basically, together with Frank, put together the group of very prominent scientists who've been thinking about it for a long time, and the group of probably the best brilliant developers who have been writing software and thinking about hardware behind this project. So, you know, this was about really putting it all together in this one project.
So it's based around radio signals and getting a message from somewhere else. Yes. Now, a lot of people do two things. By the way, the Silicon Valley people are funny you because they want to put on Star Trek outfits and dance around, apparently, from what I can tell. But in general, the imagery of aliens, there doesn't seem to be any lack of interest in the topic. The Martian movie is now one of the top movies, although he was alone on that planet, apparently, and he wanted to get off badly. The image of aliens, though, is very rich in our culture, and most of it is malevolent. Most of the time, they're either going to eat us or zap us with their rays or do other things that do experiments on humans. Why is that imagery around aliens like that? Where has that come from your perspective? Because most of it is, unless they're like E.T. I guess E.T. was the first relatively pleasant alien to show up.
E.T. was a benevolent alien.
Yes.
But most of the movies that you mentioned have malevolent characters, and that's simply because it makes exciting movies. Mm-hmm. It's not because there's any belief in the scientific world that that's the way the aliens are. Mm-hmm. In fact, we think it's the opposite. Any malevolent aliens would have wiped themselves out. Mm-hmm. They're not going to come here. Mm-hmm. The ones we will find will be the friendly ones, the ones that have gotten through the crisis of acquiring nuclear power, the ability to self-destruct. Plus, the huge distances between the stars act as a quarantine. It makes no sense to travel those distances and expend the enormous resources that are required to attack somebody. Mm-hmm. The possible benefits are way out of proportion to the actual cost of doing that.
So you're expecting friendly aliens?
We're expecting friendly aliens, mm-hmm. and we think they're smart aliens. Mm-hmm. Smart aliens know that traveling between the stars is very expensive and hazardous, mm-hmm. but sending messages is very inexpensive, and the messages and the information travels at the speed of light. It's the best situation you could have.
Well, you're very hopeful, I think.
Yeah, the incredible thing is that the other civilization does not have to be more advanced than us mm-hmm. for us to be able to communicate. If they use exactly the same equipment as we're using, mm-hmm. we can hear them across the galaxy. That's how cheap this thing is. Mm-hmm. So we're not spending huge resources on our radars, mm-hmm. and yet the radars that we use today are visible for about 1 million nearby stars today. So we're already communicating in a way, and the signal that we can be picking up is not necessarily the one which is sent our way. It can be a so-called leakage. Mm-hmm. So maybe they're communicating between themselves, maybe they have a couple of planets like Earth and Mars, and they're communicating between those two planets. So chances are that we might pick up some sort of a signal that is not directed at us.
So why have we not picked up a signal for now? I mean, if presumably, if they're either equal to us or better, what is your thinking?
Well, you can only have an opinion on that. So
all right.
I'll give you my opinion is we haven't looked nearly enough. We estimate, when we just take into account how long civilizations might keep transmitting detectable signals and how many there are, that we really need to look at maybe 1 million or more stars before we're going to hit on one that's sending us a signal we can detect. But then there's the question of what channel. And it turns out in the radio spectrum, there is a broad range of frequencies where interstellar communication is easy and inexpensive. We use those same frequencies to communicate with our spacecraft. The aliens will know about these. These frequencies are determined by just the arrangement of the universe. But in that window, which we call the water hole because the water molecule has frequencies, radio frequencies in it, in that window there is room for over 10 billion channels. We have been searching with receivers which can receive a few million channels, but we have hardly touched that huge number of channels. And so we have not looked at enough stars, nor at enough frequencies. The big news about breakthrough is that it's going to use the most modern technology, new technology, to cover the whole thing, to look at more than 1 million stars, and to cover all those channels where signals are likely.
So the question, when we think about aliens, if you are lucky and you get someone to return your phone call, the name aliens, I was just thinking, it's kind of, well, it's sort of fraught in this presidential race. Well, let's hope Trump doesn't build a wall around the earth. He would do that. But should they be, I know it sounds dumb, but rebranded? Why should they be called aliens? Or what's the... What are
ETs, we call them ETs.
You call them ETs,
I didn't use the word alien. Did you?
Okay. Do you like the word alien?
No.
No. ET is
ET.
ET.
Kara, but it's important to understand we're not communicating with them. We want to listen, just listen. We're not deliberately sending any signals.
Right.
We're just in a listening mode because this is a very cheap and efficient way to see if there's anybody out there.
But presumably, eventually, you want to talk to them, correct?
Yeah, but I mean, only if you hear something.
Right.
I think that, and even if you hear something, the dialogue is going to be very slow because there is, if you find it at the nearest star, it will take 4 years for the signal to go back, to go there, and 4 years back. So 8 years is the fastest you can have this dialogue. And if you do it across the galaxy, it takes 50,000 years one way.
Okay.
So it's a slow conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, I thought the coverage on Sand Hill Road was slow. So if that's the case, then the idea is just to figure out if they're there. That's your goal, not to have them arrive and we have a whatever we do with aliens, a party, an extraterrestrial.
It's more than that, though.
What is the goal to have if they get here, if they actually get here? Because some people think that extraterrestrials have been here a long time. Are you of that thought?
No, and I've checked into a lot of reports and alleged evidence for extraterrestrial landings and association with terrestrial people. And none of them hold water. They all turn out to be very phenomena you expect from our own creatures.
Right.
Now, what are we looking for? Well, we just would like to find another civilization, just to know that indeed there are other civilizations out there. Mm-hmm. When that happens, that will really tantalize us because we want to know a lot of things about them. And as Yuri just said, it takes a long time to ask a question and wait for an answer, maybe thousands of years, and that's not very much fun.
Yeah.
So what the hope is that we will find a civilization that is releasing information about itself, either intentionally for the benefit of newcomers like ourselves. We're going to be the new kids on the block in the galaxy.
Okay.
Or they broadcast television over the air and such as we do, and if we could capture that, we could learn all about them without having to ask a question and avoid the great time delay.
What do you imagine they think of us from our broadcast signals?
Well, they're probably scratching their heads.
Yeah, I'm guessing.
But you have to understand that our signals are only 50 light years away, which is probably covering a few hundred stars.
Right.
So you kind of need to wait a little bit longer for
them to think we're
our
idiots. Okay.
TV,
when
to
they
spread
suddenly
around.
get Mork and Mindy or something. So when you're thinking about, do you think aliens have been here? Have extraterrestrials have arrived on this planet? Or he's felt like these UFOs, there's just continual around Area 59, everything else.
Well, Carl Sagan said extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Mm-hmm. And the standard here should be very high. Right, you really need to prove, and no one ever reached even 1% of the bar that needs to be reached. So the difference with our project is that this is a very hard science. You know, you take the equipment that have been built by very smart engineers, you take the best software, you connect it to the best hardware, and that's how you address the question. So. And I also agree with Frank that the traveling between stars is extraordinarily expensive. And early on he told me that no intelligent civilization will ever try that, just because they're intelligent. For example, if you try to travel at any reasonable speed, then every single speck of dust will basically be equivalent to a nuclear explosion. So it's very likely that traveling is really not the best option, while radio waves are very cheap and easy, and they travel at the speed of light. So So it's just an easier call.
But isn't your goal to meet them or not, just to hear about? What is your goal? Would you like to meet an extraterrestrial?
I'd like to, but I don't think we're going to,
Right.
except by seeing them as we meet people by watching them in movies or
Okay.
something like that. And indeed, we can learn about them if we can capture something like their television, and that will be good enough, at least to my sense of what's good.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we ever get a signal,
mm-hmm.
and this is a sort of low probability, high impact project.
Right, which is what you...
If we ever get a signal, I think that on one hand, life will not change dramatically. You know, you will be sitting on stage doing interviews.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll be doing
I would like
investments.
to interview an extraterrestrial.
But I think our life will change in a very subtle ways. If we just know that we're not alone in the universe, I think this is just kind of one of the few things that can unify all human beings.
It's so nice. It's going to change. I think people will freak out if they feel like there's another being somewhere else. I think it'll have much more impact than that. So are you prepared for that idea that if you do get a signal and it's, well, many people will not believe it, or there'll be conspiracy theories around extraterrestrials, or there's constant theories around that?
We are prepared, and twice in my history I thought I had found the signal. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, there's a very strange and intense emotion you feel because you realize we are opening the door to a whole new world of information. We're going to learn the history of our future, the history of the future, what becomes of civilizations like us, because most of the ones we find will be much older than we are.
Right.
We'll find out, do they colonize space? Do they achieve immortality? You know, some very big things will be learned, and it will change everything here. So I would like to see this happen, but as Yuri says, we're in a way playing the lottery. We have to buy a lot of tickets in the form of radio frequencies and stars that we look at. But the prize is just bigger beyond anything you can imagine.
So do you think we should travel? There's a lot, you know, Elon talks about living on Mars and actually dying on Mars, and obviously it's in the ethos now, this idea that there's water on Mars. Do you want to travel and live elsewhere and become an extraterrestrial?
No, because there are people who are, you know, much more adapt to that sort of adventure. But I think we should basically separate two things. One is colonizing solar system, which I think makes perfect sense. It's not traveling between the stars. It's within reach. You know, Elon Musk kind of knows how to do it in the next 20, 30 years. And I think it makes a lot of sense to diversify and so on. What we are interested in is everything which is going on outside the solar system. Mm-hmm. So it's a mutually complementary approach. And I think there are a lot of people, including government agencies, that are supporting a lot of projects inside the solar system, like the New Horizons, mm-hmm. The Pluto mission, and so on. But we're focusing on sort of the bigger existential questions that are not funded by anyone else.
And would you like to travel in space? No.
Not particularly, no. I like it here.
Okay. I'm going to open up for Q&A in a second. But how much money are you willing to commit to this, Yuri?
Well,
I mean, $100 million doesn't go as far as it used to.
This is $100 million to start with. I think this is going to last for 10 years. Mm-hmm. But if we don't find anything, we need to keep going, because if we don't find anything, that's not the evidence that there is nobody out there. Mm-hmm. So I think that we have responsibility to keep looking, because the question is so important.
Is there anything else you're going to be looking for after extraterrestrials?
After
that, you've invested in medicine and medical issues, extraterrestrials. Anything else? The bottom of the ocean, the Loch Ness Monster, I don't know.
Well, you can kind of do only a few things at a time, so we can talk about it next time.
Okay, all right. Okay, questions from the audience about extraterrestrials? Questions? Go ahead.
Hi. What do you think about theories that grays live among us on Earth?
Grays, what, I'm sorry.
Grays are certain kinds of extraterrestrials. They're sort of theories that ETs have come down and...
Yeah, why are they called grays? I'm sorry, I'm not up on my Star
Oh, I don't know. I was wondering if you guys knew.
Right, okay.
This is all top secret.
Frank,
Okay. So that they're living among us now?
Yeah.
Like you, for example?
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, what about accounts like Fire in the Sky?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I personally think most of the Google management team is from another planet, but that's... I know, I've often wanted to sort of scratch them to see if there's lizard under the skin, but go ahead.
I can see you, and you don't look like a gray. So
Yeah.
you're not a ringer that was
Yeah.
planted by the grays to...
Right.
I'm more of a pink.
As I said previously, a lot of us have looked into reports of the grays and so forth and never can find anything that holds water. The thing we always ask of people who claim to have been abducted or been visited by extraterrestrials is, tell us something you learned that we didn't know and we can go out and verify is true. And it has never happened. There has just never been any evidence which supports the idea that there's been a contact between a human and an extraterrestrial. And as Yuri and Carl Sagan said, great claims require great evidence, and we haven't found anything, even trivial evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So far, no aliens. Sorry, go back to your planet.
Hi, I'm wondering if you could talk a bit about how you actually do this listening. And particularly, I was interested in light. So if aliens are communicating with light, how do you differentiate that from starlight or something else?
Well, we're going to do two things. One is radio frequency range, and this is, as Frank said, is the most efficient way to communicate. There is one other possibility that you probably have in mind, which is lasers. This is also a possibility that we're also looking at, and one of the telescopes that we have a deal with will be specifically focused on this, and it happens to be in Silicon Valley. It's called Lick Observatory, and the instrument which is sitting there is the most sensitive laser finder that we have. So this is a parallel initiative to whatever radio can bring us.
Thanks.
So one of the theories behind the Fermi Paradox is that, or two of the theories is that, A, we live in such a rural part of our galaxy that extraterrestrial life has actually not visited because we're just out in the boonies. But then the other theory is that there's civilizations that are so much more advanced than us that they would look at us as sort of insects in comparison to them. So what are your thoughts on both, A, the fact that we might be living in such a remote part of the galaxy, and B, if we do encounter that extraterrestrial life, that they would treat us more like insects than they would human beings?
Yeah, please.
Well, two comments on that. One is on the Fermi Paradox. As Yuri has pointed out, radio works better than sending spacecraft. It's not dangerous, it's inexpensive, the information goes at the speed of light. So a smart civilization would have really no motivation for colonizing the stars, which is a very expensive proposition. Let me give you an example, a quick example. Suppose you were going to send a colony. It's said that a colony that is viable, that can build a new civilization on a star, has to be about 100 people. So you take 100 people and you put them in a spacecraft about the size of a 737 aircraft, and you accelerate it up to 1/10 the speed of light. Then you ask a simple little physics question, which high school students can answer. How much energy does it take to get up to 1/10 the speed of light with a 737 aircraft? It turns out to be 200 years of the total electric power production in the United States. So you'd have to shut down America for 200 years to launch the mission. And that gets them there, but there's no energy to stop. So there's a little problem left over for the engineers to solve. How do we decelerate and land somewhere? Now that's the physics and economics of interstellar travel, and it's very daunting and very inhibiting. You don't do it, not when radio works so well. So that's answer to one of your questions. I forget what.
They're disrespectful of us. They think we're insects.
Pardon?
They think humans are cockroaches.
Oh.
Yeah, because they're so much more advanced.
Well,
than we are.
we have actually been in that same situation. When we get evidence about ancient terrestrial civilizations like the Greeks and Romans, and we don't consider them to be cockroaches and such. We study them, and we have whole departments of anthropology in our universities. And as long as the creatures you detect are intelligent, they will be interesting, even though they will be far behind you in their accomplishments. So I think that's not a probable situation.
Yeah. We're interesting cockroaches.
Yeah, right.
Hi, my name is Eric Lee. I'm a student from Stanford. Actually, my questions kind of related to the previous questions. So, because I look humans' history. So, humans' history is a few thousand years, at most 10,000 years. So, it's really a small time in the universe time scope. But we kind of, as humans, with technology, grow exponentially. So that's why a lot of scientists think if there are ET there, they will be much higher advanced, as the previous guy talked about. So what if the reason why we did not find ET now is that they intentionally don't want us to find them? And say in the future, a decade later, you guys did an awesome job and find a signal from the ET, and then they feel very threatened because they think humans are too intelligent. And then actually, do you think some of your job may potentially cause troubles to humans? It's just an interesting theory that
I like that theory.
Yeah.
Yes, that was a movie, I think.
Our aircraft radars that we're using are visible 1,000 light years away from Earth, whether we like it or not. If there's no other way to communicate between Mars and Earth, if Elon will set up a colony there, we will have to communicate. Mm-hmm. It takes 8 minutes for the signal, but it has to be either radio or laser signal. There's just no other way. So however they want to conceal their communication, it's very difficult to do. So I think that chances are pretty high that, like, if there is, Boeing 737 flying around, they need to communicate with this Boeing. Mm-hmm. So I think that if there is any civilization there which is as advanced as us, they would inevitably send radio signals that are detectable by our existing technology.
Yeah, no pressure, Yuri, if you destroy humanity, by doing this.
Just listening, no. I mean, some people will argue that we should not be deliberately sending, but we're not doing this.
Yeah,
I think listening is very safe.
Don't feel bad. Last quick question.
Hi, I'm just wondering if you guys harbor any doubt, and if you allow for the possibility that we are alone in the universe, and if so, what the logic behind that thinking is.
Yeah.
Any doubt?
It's really hard to imagine that we are alone. As Yuri said, there are over 50 billion possible places just in our galaxy where there are living, intelligent creatures, and 100 billion other galaxies. 200 billion is the latest figure. And we have studied in great detail the whole history of the solar system and what it took to bring us here, for us to exist with our great intellect. And what we have found that this all seems to be the very expected result of just ordinary chemistry and physics and evolution. Evolution is very important, that took place in the solar system. We haven't identified any special circumstances that were required, no freakish situations. So we think that what happened here is probably typical of what happens in Earth-like planets, which means that with the huge numbers of them out there, it must be a very common phenomenon. So in our thinking, we think it's really essentially impossible that we're alone.
No.
But this outcome that there is a chance that we're alone, which is as extraordinary as the chance that we're not. Right. I think either outcome is pretty incredible. Like the whole universe made for us would be like pretty amazing.
Yeah, because nobody in Silicon Valley has that much self-regard. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Cheyenne.
Very quickly, very quickly.
Very quickly, okay. Over the last year, a couple politicians have come out mentioning extraterrestrials. Upon exiting office, John Podesta, advisor to Obama, said his biggest regret was not telling the American public the truth about extraterrestrials. The Russian Prime Minister, if I'm saying it correctly, Medvedev also said that it's time that the U.S. tell the world the truth about extraterrestrials. Is there any truth to this?
I think John was joking. I believe that was a joke. I think it was a joke. I think he was on purpose making a joke about it, but I'm not sure. Maybe he wasn't.
Well,
Well, online it's not treated like that. I don't believe everything on the interweb, but I wonder if you had.
I'm pretty certain he was joking. But
all we can tell you is that we have a lot of interaction with very senior governmental people, particularly in NASA and in the Congress. And at no time has any one of them suggested, even accidentally, that there was actually secret evidence of extraterrestrials. Now, you can say I'm a front for that, and I'm covering up, but I'm not. So we've never seen any indication that there is hidden evidence or hidden spacecraft or alien bodies or any of that sort of thing, although that's very popular in the, I guess, the yellow press. I don't know what you call it.
I like the yellow press. I like it.
Yours from the yellow?
I've never written an alien story. I'm sorry. All right, we got to go. What's your favorite alien movie, extraterrestrial movie? I'm going to change that word.
Contact?
Contact? Yours?
Close Encounters.
Close Encounters?
The third kind, yeah.
Ah,
that kind.
mine was Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Oh, well, let's see where I am on that. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, guys.